This is 14th, is it not?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, we are on the 14th chapter, and I like to compress, if possible, 14th and 15th today, but I don't know whether we'll succeed because you never know in life, divine forest to get lost easily. So it is like venturing into a forest. Well, we have this, we have worked up to the 13th chapter that there is the, you can call it the self possession of the one on this side, that is to here, the one. Infinite is, of course, the one Satchidananda. So there is a self possession of the one, and then there is a many or multiple. You see the many on this side, world of ignorance, infinite succession or movement of the many. There is two things going on, one and the many. So connecting link between the flux of the many, this many are changing constantly because it's a flowing time. This many that we see on this side, the one that moves all the time, that is how we have seen, if you remember, right? This it moves. Well, this flux, this is a flux of the many. So this world of flux and the world of one, truth consciousness, there is a connecting link called the supermind. Supermind is the connecting link. Infinity, then supermind, and the world. You see, a changing world constantly. So that is why I put the mathematical sign to make it a little short. You see, here is the infinite realm of the one, which is the realm of the truth and the reality. Then the world of flux and many, for human mind, the world of ignorance, and the connected link is the supermind. So supermind is really the creator of the world. How will you put it? We can put it to ourselves that when the infinite turns its gaze towards creation or moves towards creation, then its nature becomes supermind of truth consciousness. It first becomes truth conscious before it projects itself into a world, into the world as we know it. The one infinite and absolute, when it moves into creation, the first step that it takes within its own self, without projection of this material world which we notice, is a truth world or a truth consciousness, a supramental consciousness. It's the nature of the supermind. As the nature of man is mind, working with division, nature of the supreme or the divine is supermind. It works and begins with truth consciousness and not with false consciousness. That is the law. That is how the world is created from the supramental truth consciousness. Well, at present it is too high for men, means mind, but it is available to man because it is man's own highest possibility or highest self at present available to him. Man can and does occasionally open to that consciousness. Mind, man, when I say mind, you must understand it is mental consciousness, mind. Heart and intellect taken together, generally with the vital willpower added to it. So when you say the mind generally opens to it, glimpses it sometimes, again it closes. Doors open, again something comes down, either mind essence or some ray of it comes down, power of it comes down, knowledge of it comes down, again the doors close. That is the relation between this mind here and this channel which connects this opposite side. Occasionally there is a chink through which the light flows from this side of the mind in the human consciousness, in society, in man, and they create religion, philosophy, or search for truth or whatever it is, like that. Now, questions, therefore, food series, how to make a permanent relation between, well, this lower triplicity of mind, life, and body on this side, world of flux, and the truth consciousness which is available and possible to man, which is a potential capacity or the height which man can attain. The problem is how to make a permanent ascent into the consciousness. Occasionally it has opened, it has brought down something, it has come here, light has come, illumination has come, the doors have again closed. There has not been a permanent station of mind into the supramental consciousness, you see. Light has opened and come down and worked here and maintained the world. Even now, when the world is not open, from behind it is supporting the world. That is not solution of man's problem. That is divine's own working out. People say, oh, even now the divine is working. So the world, but the world is not divine. That is the trouble. To man's consciousness and to our perception, the world is not divine. Though the divine is supporting it from behind. That is the whole problem is people generally, that you see, they want to avoid the trouble. So they say, divine is working everywhere and the world is supported by the divine. So it is all right. It is all right when you get into the divine consciousness, and then the world will be all right. But when you are not in the divine consciousness, and the world is not all right, and world is imperfect, then the problem of perfection, attainment of perfection does arise. And if it doesn't arise, it is no use trying to satisfy. You say, I don't believe in God. That is much better than saying, oh, all is God, everything is nice, and everything is perfect. Perfect there. Perfect there. That is exactly where you have to go. Then you will see it perfect, not now. You cannot now say with justification and with any sense of, honesty that it is perfect because it is self-evident imperfection. Imperfection doesn't require to be proved. I hope it is so self-evident as not to require any logic about it. And to say that, oh, because divine is supporting the world, otherwise the world would not have been there. Therefore, we have to do a lot. That is the whole thing. We means who represent the divine here in mind, life, and body. We are not human beings and we are not piece of matter. That is the whole truth to be realized. That it is the divine that has allowed this multiplicity and flux of the many, and the movement that is to open and take a permanent station would be the beginning of solution of problem of earth consciousness. Earth consciousness would begin to solve its problem when people or man who is embodiment of mind, life, and body consciousness, the lower triplicity, when he consciously embodies within himself the higher working of the truth consciousness, which is the first projection of the world from the infinite, from the one, from Satchidananda. You see, that is what to be done now. Well, it is doubtful that the state can be communicated. He says it is difficult to convey to the mind what is this supermind and how does this infinite one truth, you see, above all real relativity, the absolute, manage to create this world and become the creator. To the mind, it is difficult to convey because the process is not mental. Process is not easily available to the human mind. And still, there is some relation between mind and that, between this world and that, there is a relation. It is not as if because I can't describe it, therefore it doesn't exist. If I see something so wonderful and marvelous, I may say, well, it defies description, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. The relation is there between this world and that world, but it is very difficult, he says, because the rarity of the experience and also the difficulty of communication, human language and mind being limited instruments of expression of the soul, well, they don't lend themselves easily to an expression of this truth which is so baffling to the mind. You see, you put that is why they are obliged to take resort to symbols when they express the higher truth. Generally, you see, it is not because they don't they have no experience. They have experience, but they know to convey it in terms of intellect is very difficult. Therefore, they take hold of symbols. You see, whenever a great spiritual person or a being expresses himself, very often he will take resort to symbols because that is the easiest way of conveying whatever truth it is to other people. Now, but mind can therefore, because it is not fully conveyed to the mind certainly can know something about it, you see. But when it knows something about it, it can doubt and say, does that world really exist? Or are you making a mental concept and a vision out of it? Is it only a mind's vision, which has relevance only to the mind, without any applicability to life? That is to say, is it only vision of a knowledge without adequate power, without dynamic power of knowledge? Is it a state of knowledge or a power of knowledge? Is it a will to light and also will to power and work. Does this explanation or expression of the truth consciousness correspond to a power, not merely a vision of something that is there as seen, not something that can work and is dynamic? That question the mind can put. And the only solution, one way of solving it, is that mind should make an ascent to reach the truth, reach this consciousness, because mind itself from this point of view is derivative from the supermind. You can see that the process or flow of creation from being to becoming, from one to the many, from absolute to the relative here, or from the truth consciousness to the world as we know it, is creation of mind, life, matter, like that. So that mind is a derivative power of this truth consciousness. Therefore there is a relation. Mind is, even without its knowing, supported by this consciousness. Mind is not left alone to work out the problem of reaching the reality. See, mind seeks the reality because it's a derivative from the reality. Naturally, therefore, it tries to go back to the reality of which it's a derivative. Mind can ascend, and because mind is derived from the supermind, so there is we can have some finger post in the mind and know something about it either by intuition in the mind, by inspiration in the mind, by some revelation of the higher light which breaks out into the mental consciousness, into the empyrean of human mind. That is how people have known something about it. An intuition comes, an inspiration comes, some light comes, a vision of revelation, revelation of the higher truth suddenly opens out in the mental consciousness itself. Well, that gives us the first inkling. More than that, the finger post to this nature of creative divine consciousness is given in one of the oldest books of the world, the Rig Veda. In the Veda, you find this finger post. In there, the language is symbolic, but still it points how to the process of how the Satchidananda, the infinite and the eternal, has become, so to say, and is, well, the flux that you notice or perceive as the world. Well, there it is contained. And in what way does it contain? He speaks of this thing as vast. Vastness that is beyond the firmament of our physical and mental consciousness. They will say beyond earth and heaven. Earth is the physical consciousness, heaven is the mental consciousness. You see, beyond earth and heaven, well, there is a vastness. Brihat, the word they use in the Veda is Brihat. Brihat is vast, and this vast is beyond the firmament of earth and heaven, the two firmaments. It is all comprehensive, luminous truth consciousness, harmony of being. In the vastness, you have comprehensiveness, luminosity of truth, and harmony of being. And they speak of this as gods. This truth conscious power is spoken of as gods, and gods are said to be truth conscious. Rita Chit. The Chit means truth conscious. The consciousness of the God is truth conscious. It is not mental conscious. Well, Agni is said to be seer will. Agni is said to be, yes, Kavi Kratu. The Kavi, the seer who has the will that effectuates itself. Where light is one with the force or power of will, you see, knowledge and will go together. That is why he is called the seer will. Where the vibration of knowledge is one with the rhythm of, you can say, will, and both become indefinable or indistinguishable or inseparable. There, the divine nature is described as distinguished from human nature. When the Rig Veda speaks of the realm of the gods or realm of the truth consciousness, it is really describing to us the divine nature and its function, how the divine nature is constituted. First knowledge we get is a finger post from the past, in which divine nature is described in its twofold power of spontaneous self formation and a self arrangement which comes out naturally from the essence of the thing that is manifested. It is the second part of it is force of light which is inherent in the thing itself. And say this is a little difficult, but let me finish the Vedic portion because without that, perhaps the indication will left, not clear. The two process by which man knows this divine consciousness is inspiration and revelation. The two powers by which mind has known something about this truth consciousness is inspiration and revelation. Hearing of the vibration of truth and seeing the vision of the truth. These two powers have brought man some inkling of the constitution of divine nature. That there is some plane where you can see the truth. There is some plane where a vibration of truth, well, is sent forth and the mind can hear it and receive the vibration of truth and give expression to it either in intellectual language or in symbolic language or in some way in human language or thought. So that these two powers in the human consciousness, inspiration and revelation, give an inkling of the working of the divine nature which has first projected itself into the world. You see? Now, it is truth vision and truth audition, as Sierno calls it, you see? And this is mentally reflected in mental consciousness. Now, therefore, you can say, I have put it that way. Now we can change this a little and put it a little differently in this way. There, right there. There. We can put it a little bit in different way like that. If you take Satchidananda in the here, means the infinite, you see, and the absolute, then from it you derive the supermind, and from it you derive the mind. You can put it that way also for understanding, you see. Put it that way if you like, and then the process will be from mind to ascend to the supermind, and the counter process will be there. Yes, you see the absolute one in indivisible consciousness, then the projection of it first in the supermind, truth consciousness, and mind, which is analytical and dividing faculty. Supermind is comprehensive and creative consciousness. Eternally stable one and eternally mutable many. That's how it works out, you see. Eternally stable one unity above and eternally mutable many. See, this is eternally mutable many here. This is eternally mutable. This also has an eternity about it. Therefore, you say eternally mutable. And this is eternally one. You see? Yeah. One in many, originally one, always potentially many. One, when you say yes, eternally stable, eternally mutable. But the one, originally the one, eternal, always holds within itself potentiality of the many. It is not as if the one was negative and incapable of the multiplicity. It is there that human mind gets into difficulty and is lost in the maze, so to say, in the labyrinth. You see that it thinks that if it is one, it is one, but it's not a mental one. This one that we speak of is infinite and eternal, therefore not subject to the terms of mind. That is why the one that we say eternal and one and stable, it holds within itself also the potentiality of the many all the time. It is not as if that the one was Unitarian, you see. Well, that is one important thing because those who describe the absolute do not know that when they say that absolute cannot become active, cannot create, cannot act, cannot have any multiplicity within it. They themselves are arbitrarily limiting the absolute. In fact, it is a wrong definition of the absolute to say that absolute is this, then it is not absolute. If the mind can define the absolute and put it within limits, then it will cease to be absolute. You see, people don't see the wrong logic about the definition. If Brahman is infinite, how can it create the world? Then how can it be Brahman? You see, the idea is that they project from the human mentality to logic of the finite is applied wrongly to the logic of the infinite. Logic of the finite is true. That in this mental world, logic of the finite, well, a man generally acts out of attachment. Then they say, therefore, man falls from the status of his knowledge. Now, if Brahman creates, he will also fall from his status. Then he won't be Brahman, he will be a man. You see, this is the logic of the finite is not commensurate with the logic of the infinite. In the finite, 1 plus 1 or 2 plus 2, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. But in the logic of the infinite, infinite plus infinite is equal to infinite. Infinite multiplied by infinite is equal to infinite. So logic of the finite cannot be correctly and without mistake applied to the logic of the infinite. Well, that is where the mind goes wrong. And here, for instance, the one problem of one and the many has baffled many people simply because they can't think in terms of one and many being held by one truth. In fact, he says here, the true freedom of the eternal is that he must be beyond unity and multiplicity. True freedom of the absolute or the eternal does not consist in his being confined to unity. You follow that? It's very simple if you follow his logic. Well, people only get lost because they don't get at what he wants to say. They always say it's not complicated at all. It's very clear. But then you have to deal with concepts which may tax your mind. And as I said last night, you have to adjust the screws of your mind before you can because you are dealing with vast proportions and generally being habituated to deal with small things. Well, those big things don't get into the mind easily. So you adjust the screws a little and make it a little more loose. Then some people say that you can't follow philosophy unless there is some screw loose in your mind. And that's why all those who follow yoga have some screw loose. Otherwise, you can't follow yoga. You can't follow yoga unless there's something. That's what my friend, you see, old man of 84 found out in England, Dr. Cyril Bailey, professor of philosophy in, you see, Oxford. He was retired when I saw him. And he was talking to me quite nicely and we had very good. And suddenly the subject of spirituality came and then we talked about it. And I said that man can realize the divine if he has to make an effort and it is possible and so on. It simply took his breath away. He was surfing. He thought that this is quite a reasonable man, quite in his senses, and suddenly what has happened? He thought there was some screw somewhere quite loose. But I think that unless there is some screw loose, you can't follow spirituality. Something in you must be a little out of the common, you see. Yes, you must not be able to look at things or accept things as they are. Well, I think it's not a bad condition. It's quite reasonable to start with that sort of, eccentricity, a little looseness in mind. Some screw loose somewhere. The freedom of the eternal, he says, must be beyond unity and beyond multiplicity. That is real freedom. You must give him full freedom. If you accept an infinite and eternal, you must not bind him to your idea of unity. Yes, he must be beyond unity and beyond multiplicity, beyond all positive and negative conceptions of the human mind. For instance, he gives the instance. We take Sat, Chit, Ananda, and we say Sat, eternal being, Chit, infinite, eternal conscious power, Ananda, infinite and unending or eternal delight. But we put three concepts. This is wrong, he says. These are not three things at all. This in the mind, because mind cannot act except on the basis of division. Therefore, we say Sat, Chit, Anand. It is one, indivisibly one. And you would then conceive, oh, something in which there is being, but at the same time consciousness, or at the same time delight, all the three working at the same time. Well, you have got a mental concept, not a realization anyway. It's an idea. You got an idea. That's all. An abstract concept of what it is, not the reality itself, but you can say a mental picture of the reality. Even then, to separate is the first, because you can't grasp, therefore you separate. When you say, no, this was a mistake, then you put the three together and say, now this three makes up one. It is one constructed whole for the mind. But even then, it is not the thing. It is certainly better than you're dividing into three parts and thinking, oh, if there is being, then there are schools of philosophy and yoga in which they only accept being. You'll be surprised to know. They only say, oh, we merge into the being. You see, the division becomes practically very important. It is not so unimportant to know that mind is at work and mind must be allowed not to commit a mistake in the conception or in the analysis or understanding of the comprehension of the original truth or ultimate reality. If you divide it in such a way and say, now, infinite being is the ultimate truth, consciousness is imposed upon it. Well, naturally, then you reject consciousness, you reject delight, and you say, I want to merge into the absolute infinite consciousness, being. And being alone, that matters. Well, that is what the existentialists are actually telling. Existentialists are telling that being alone is important and nothing else matters. Well, that is where the mind can go wrong and take one to the, at a tangent from the seeking of the reality. So it is necessary from the beginning to put mind in its proper place of seeking the reality as a place. But it is not as if it were capable of deciding finally the nature of the ultimate reality. Because mind is essential multiplicity, and therefore mind can always act on the division. You see, it's a mental process of knowing existence and consciousness and bliss as if they were separate. But really speaking, when we speak of this infinite Satchidananda, we mean an indivisible unity. An indivisible unity. Mind is only a preparatory term and not an instrument of essential knowledge. And therefore, what mind does is cut part from the whole and treat that part as if that was the whole again. That is what the mind constantly is doing, and you see, deals with this part as if it was separate object and the whole thing, and it knows not even that object, but its own analysis of the object, its sensation of the object, its perception of the object. It doesn't know the object. You see, if you say, I want to study the world, all right, then you cut and say, I'll study matter. So from the whole universal, manifestation or the total reality, one indivisible whole, because it is so interconnected that you don't know where it, merges from the other. But when the mind wants to study, mind cuts and says, now I will study matter. Now you artificially divided a portion from the whole. And now you've taken matter as the whole. And you start as if matter was a whole reality. As a matter of fact, it's a part of a total reality. You see, well, that is all mental knowledge is like that. I'm only taking. Then you take, one element and then say this is whole. And then you take one atom and you say it's a whole. You can go on dividing, but it is really speaking, arriving at a piecemeal knowledge of something which should not really be divided. It knows its own analysis of the thing and does not know the object. This happens to mind because mind has taken its rise from matter. Mind is embedded in matter. Therefore, automatically, some limitation of matter operates in all its efforts at knowledge. Here, in the supramental of which we are talking, the truth consciousness, well, there is the self concentration which is greater than this cosmos. Is self-gathered concentration which is greater than all, means greater than the universe. And there, in that original self-concentration which is greater than the all, you cannot give it the term even one, because to call it one would be to define it and limit it. That is the nature of the absolute self-concentration of the Supreme. Yeah. And but this in the supermind, it becomes vast self-extension of the infinite, and it contains and develops. It contains a thing and develops by movement in what we feel as time. It knows and contains, so that it has an original self concentration, which is one, and a power of diffusion. You call it self diffusion if you like. To us, it appears as if self disintegration, as if he has divided himself and cut himself into bits and parts. But it is really a power of self diffusion. And third power which Superman brings into existence is a firm hold on the self extension, not allowing it to be a disintegration. You see, a self extension which spreads out the infinite, so to say, then to the mind it feels as if it is disintegrated. There, where is the unity? We don't see the unity. Of course, when you take up matter, objects are so infinitely multiple that you will be baffled. Suddenly you discover there is unity. So you say no, elements, compounds. Then in the element, organic, inorganic. Then again. So you get at something which leads you to unity gradually, even there in the realm of the most divided expression of the Satchidananda. You understand? You gradually are linked to the one. Yeah. Now, it is this third aspect of the superman which keeps an hold on the self extension and doesn't allow the diffusion to become disintegration. Unity is maintained in diversity, and it maintains stability in the midst of utmost mutability. You see? Stability is maintained in most inconceivable mutability, changeableness. You see, change is constantly going on, and yet stability is maintained because of the supermind. Diffusion of self diffusion is not allowed to become disintegration. You see, that is what is behind mind, behind life, behind matter, behind mind, life, and body. And supermind is working even now. Problem is man to realize it and raise in his consciousness to that so that it may become an active part of evolutionary process of earth consciousness. Problem is not that supermind is to be created. Supermind is there already, otherwise the world would not have been there. World is created a projection out of the truth consciousness. Problem for the world is to realize the origin and make a permanent station in the origin and make the truth consciousness originative of the cosmos, a dynamic factor in the process of Earth evolution. That is the problem. Problem is not merely to merge into the infinite and cease to be and be one infinite and then have some sort of extraordinary connection with some truth or somewhere to get away and all that are side issues which are quite good in their own way, but they don't solve the central problem of man. You see? Well, you can take, as he says, the movement of this one and many as double involution, where spirit and matter, two ends, you feel the two ends. The process from there to here can be put in terms of mind as spirit, matter. Well, double evolution. In matter, the whole of the spirit is involved. In spirit, the whole potentiality of matter is involved. And what we feel is a movement of one from the other. You see, a descent and an ascent. A ladder that comes down and a ladder that goes up from spirit to the matter, from matter to spirit. You see, it's a double process going on because it is you can describe it if you like as a double evolution at work, not double evolution standing static. No, it's double evolution, moving all the time. Well, every seed, now he gives a very fine instance, and I wanted that at that time to make clear how in the divine nature, a spontaneous self formation and self arrangement is set to work. A force, inherent in the very being itself is made to fulfill that which is seen in the supermind as the truth. Every seed implies all infinite possibility that is in the seed. You see, every seed contains the whole infinity. You see, it is there, that is to say, there is, you can say, a spontaneous self formation and self knowledge and self arrangement at work, is it not? The tree is pre existent in the seed. In the supermind, the whole world is pre existent in the, as we notice it here. It is pre existent there in potentiality. Yes. Every seed implies all infinity of possibility of the seed. In the mind, of course, this becomes thought and existence separate. Thought and but in the supermind, the the impulse at work and the being are not two. You see, the existence is not separate from the idea that is working in it. The existence of the tree and the idea that is working in the seed is one and the same. So spontaneously it works out without any outer intervention. Nobody is required to tell the seed that you have to bring only, this tree out of yourself. The idea is already pre-existent, and existence and power is together. You see, here in the mind, thought is separated from existence. To the mind, existence or reality appears like separated from each other and abstract. When mind thinks an idea, idea is abstract. It doesn't feel idea is a power. Really speaking, when it conceives an ideal, what does it conceive? Something beyond it, the realized realm of its experience, and yet something unexperienced which it wants to make real, is it not? That's the ideal. Ideal is the perception of perfection, realize need of realizing something which has not become actual in terms of matter. And mind is trying to get at the ideal because it believes that the potentiality of manifestation here is infinite. So that which does not exist can be brought here because it is already there. Remember, ideal would not have come into the ken of the mind if it was pre-existent. People don't understand, and they always say we are creating God. There are schools of thought that actually say even Tagore believed it. Take my word for that. Yes, we are realizing, if you say, you are not making, you wouldn't have thought of perfection if perfection was not there. It is always pre existent, you see. Well, therefore, what we call nature is really speaking, you know, a energy which is charged with the sheer will, where knowledge and force of conscious being seems to be at work. Some knowledge force of conscious being seems to be at work. And in this supermind, being, consciousness of knowledge, and consciousness of will are one and indivisible. That is the nature of the supermind. Supermind is a level of consciousness or plane of being where infinity of being, consciousness of knowledge of the being, consciousness of the will of that infinite being are one and indivisible. You cannot separate the consciousness of existence from consciousness of will, existence from consciousness. Well, that is a supermind. All being is therefore in supermind consciousness, and all consciousness in supermind is being. Light of reality illuminates itself in the supermind, and self awareness is effective. In the mind, the self awareness is not effective. Mind becomes aware of purity. Immediately, the whole being does not become pure. But in the supermind, when self awareness of the supermind awakes, well, whatever awakes is immediately effective. Therefore, its knowledge is every time, knowledge of what is. not a conceptual knowledge, but of the actuality, by identity, by self-awareness, which is effective. Yeah. Where light of idea, where idea becomes vibration of consciousness, it is a vibration of being, and this idea is called the real idea to distinguish it from mental idea. The infinite being, any number of self-awarenesses, infinite potentiality, and each is a real idea because it is the self-conception of the reality, not of mind. In the mind, the idea may not correspond to reality. Idea may not carry with itself the power of effectivity, the corresponding will. Adequacy of will may not go with the perception of mental knowledge. In the supermind, the idea is not only a vision but also a power. It is, as it says here, fire where you cannot separate the heat from the light. You see, what is seen, well, is the truth. What is truth, perceived as truth, has a power of effectivity. So there, the truth is not as if unable or truth, a truth which is inflicted with incapacity to realize itself. No, it's a truth which is charged with the power of self-realization in the condition of the cosmos. Light, burning of fire, in which you find light and burning power the same. You see, well, one infinite, the one that is the infinite, contains within itself infinite capacity of differentiation, power of deployment of its unity. The wonderful words he had got, deploying the unity. In an army, how to deploy? See, 25 soldiers can be within a small square yard, the number of square yards. But when you deploy, well, the same number can occupy large area, you see, because it's deploying, yes. This is, yeah. One infinite, he says, has an infinite capacity of self differentiation, not division. Differentiate. Rose is one. Then there is pink, white, blue, green, dark. It is self differentiation. There is no division at work at all. You see? Yes. It is a self differentiation, infinite power of self differentiation, which deploys the unity without end. The unity is deployed and spread. Well, that is what we feel as the world. In the mind, the I, the idea of the mind, the will, are distinct, separate from each other. I, my idea and my existence. To the mind, it appears this is the idea, not myself. But the idea comes from the self only. It is not easily known. But mind has a difference between in the power that it is and the existence, the mental power, mental idea, and so on. That is why supermind, as the creator, contains the omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence of the supreme in dynamic movement. That is the nature of the supramental consciousness. Well, that is one part which we wanted to try today. Another part is about the truth consciousness and its nature. Now, this is the 15th chapter, you see. And what is supermind? Again, once more. Nature of the divine being in action. Look at simple definition in one sense. Nature of the divine being in action. That is supermind. Then it is the Lord, it is the creator, it is the divine being, if you like to put it. You see? But it is the divine being in action. That is supermind. Therefore, because it is divine being in action, it is omnipresent. We just had it in the last chapter, is it not? It's omnipresent. Where do we see this omnipresence? We see it present everywhere as an operation of truth consciousness in which an ordering self knowledge seems to be at work. This is, yes, a self knowledge which is ordering everything around. You see, material world, vegetable world, plant world, insect world. You see, yes, a self ordering, yes, an ordering self knowledge. If that was not there, there would be only chaos. If infinite potentiality was set to work without this, you know, ordering self knowledge, it would only be chaos, is it not? Anything could be going on, happening all the time, and we wouldn't be able to find some order somewhere, either in matter or in plant or in life or in any world. It is present. Otherwise, there would be chaos because potentiality, when it is infinite, and if it is allowed to work itself out, it would only create anarchy, chaos, or lead to a play of, as he calls in life divine, unbounded and uncontrolled chance. Unbounded, uncontrolled chance would be the word, nature, not an order. But we find an order. That's why omnipresence is there. Yes, of the supermind, the truth consciousness. It is predetermined idea in every seed. And if this predetermined idea is not there, then the world would be only, as he calls, teeming, amorphous, confused uncertainty. Teeming, amorphous, confused uncertainty. Language also is something, tremendous. That's why I told this fellow in England, I challenge anyone to write one paragraph. Secondly, that this presence is there. What is the second sign of this omnipresence? Second line, we feel law there. Self-ordering, self-knowledge or ordering self-knowledge creates to the mind something which the mind perceives as a law. But what is this law? Law is the expression of self-nature of thing. And this is determined by the compelling truth of the real idea. Law is that our perception of the working out of the real idea, which is there predetermined, predestined, and bound to work out. Development of the world is still taking place. It's not as it were, it was a static world in which everything was fixed up. So now we are coming to the status, the movement dynamics. You see, law seems to be like a fixture in dynamics, that pre-existence idea and working out in potentiality in a seed tree. Again, tree, seed, tree, seed, tree. Yes, it is a appears as if it is a movement in a circle, but it is not status in the sense of nothing happening. It is a dynamics, it's a movement in time and space. It's not as it were, it was somewhere else in a realm of static unreality, everything fixed up and forever going on as it began. No, it is constantly changing in the sense of bringing out the pre existent idea into actuality. Now, this development of the world in time and space is regulated interaction of things. Now, this development of the world in time and space is regulated interaction of things related to each other, in time and space, in succession of time. And because this relation takes place in time, it gives us the idea of causality. Really speaking, there is hardly causality in the mental sense of the term, but mind perceives it as a causality. You see, supposing a sound was taking place due to one particular movement of forces. And at the same time, something was being seen constantly, immediately, one after the other. The sound and the sight, sound and the sight. What the mind will do is to connect them as cause and effect, isn't it? The sound might be due to quite different causes. The sight might be due to quite different causes. But if there is a, succession, or as they call it, you know, uh, sequence, so to say, or, it is a, it's a fine word he has used in that divine. A complex of conditions that precede, and a complex of conditions that follow. Conditions that precede and conditions that follow. Well, if they seem to succeed each other, they always get connected in human mind as causality. This is the cause, this is the effect. But it's not necessary. In fact, that is every time mind has fixed a causality, it has always found it doesn't work all the time. Even in science, which claims to be most exact and exacting in a certain sense, even there, law of indeterminacy now. Even in science today, Schrodinger has found the law of indeterminacy. It is very difficult to determine the cause. It is indeterminate because if you enter into the atomic ring, you will interfere into the process that is at work by introducing a ray of light into it. That is one reason. Second reason is if you take a cylinder full of particles of which they speak and you subject them to a process of analysis or change or action of X-ray or bombardment of atom forces, what you find is that some change has taken place. Now the question is, out of this cylinder of atoms full of some millions or some thousands of it, some will undergo a change and others will not undergo a change. You follow? Some will undergo the change, some will not. Now the law of causality requires why those particles which are identical in constitution underwent a change, whereas others did not, when they were subjected to the same conditions, same temperature, pressure, and all, chemical conditions being governed. If in a cylinder of 500 forces, 500 atoms or electrons or particles, if 200 or 150 underwent a change and the rest have been unchanged, say our mathematics or our science told us that it was the same elements or same particles, then why some underwent a change and others did not? So the scientists now come around and say, no, we are giving you only average behavior. We are not giving you exact, that is not possible. We are only giving you average behavior. It is indeterminate. It is not possible to determine how each element is yes, that's it. Law of causality is mind perception of a process, not necessarily bound therefore to be, well, to tally with the reality, with the facts. That's all. It's a rough perception of mind trying to connect some two, well, preceding and succeeding conditions and collecting them by causality and saying this is the cause of the other. In fact, we don't know all the causes of one particular thing. That is the one law which mind ignores. That when mind says this is the cause, it doesn't know many of the factors which are also leading and contributory to the result or so-called result. You see, you say that this change was brought about by this particular factor. If you analyze, after some time, the same factor will not bring the same result. Then you search why it has happened. Then you find some other thing was there which you neglected. That is to say, the result that you see is not the result of that one cause, but of milieu of causes, complex of causes is at work. In one particular result that you see, what brings about the result is not one factor or one force or one power or one energy. There might be hundreds and hundreds of forces trying to bring about that one result. We notice only one and say, this is the cause of this. Well, that seems to be as it were it was major and so on. But that major sinks into insignificance as soon as something else comes to the surface. And we say, oh, this was really the cause. Then again you say, oh, all the time you have to go and change, shift in ground because the number of forces that can be envisaged in a situation to bring about result is difficult to determine. Many subconscious and unknown forces can be at work, and you never know how a thing can work out. Say in a political situation, in a social situation, in economic situation, people say this will bring this result. Don't believe. Any result can come from anything. So you say, I will gain when I do this. You may not gain, you may lose. You will say, I will lose in this. You might gain suddenly. So you see, this battle will be won. Well, it might be lost. Actually, in the last war, this several times I noticed that. You see, that Lord Montgomery's army is poised for attack on this tomorrow, this final day, and so on. Next day, oh, the attack postponed. General Mudd in charge. It rained heavily last night. What all the forces were ready, everything was finished and determined, and this will have no something intervened. So in a milieu, in a situation, the result that comes about is not of one cause or one force or one energy operating, but of many known and unknown energies simultaneously acting. That is why we leave room for another result. When somebody says this result, we say this man has got this disease, therefore, no, therefore, it can go. People say this disease is not cured, but it can be cured. How do you know? That's exactly where the limitations of mind comes. Well, that's another. Now, time and space are only this conscious being doing its own self in self-extension or in extension. The infinite, when it views itself in self-extension, but subjectively it is time, objectively it becomes space. When the infinite being views its own conscious being in self extension, then they become what we understand as time and space. When it views itself extending subjectively, it is time. When it views itself extending objectively, it is space. So, what you notice as space is nothing else but self extension of the Brahman. Brahman infinitely spread out. That's why they say universe is expanding. Universe is because there is no limit to self-expansion of the extension of the Brahman. Well, it's infinite self-expansion. That is space. Space is consciousness charged with the presence of the infinite. Space is not empty. Space is not only ether is only the material sign which man and sense can feel of the presence of the Supreme. It is the presence of the infinite. Well, yes, mind measures time by event and space by matter. Time and space are only two aspects of the universal force of consciousness. And to consciousness which is higher than mind, then to it time is not past, present, and future. Time is eternal. And therefore, eternity and time are concepts of the mind, really speaking. They are dealing with the mind of a reality in which this division of that past, present, and future, or near and distant, far, and all that, does not hold the same reality in a higher dimension of consciousness. That's why eternity is not only addition of time. In fact, that is what I told these people at the meeting there at San Francisco. Time is only process, change, variation. Time is movement. It is a process at work. That's all. And there's no fixed duration of measurable time by watch that is fixed for anything. No, a process can be shortened, can be lengthened. That is time. That's all. You see, time is and therefore in eternity, or you can compress it in a moment. You can expand it, and yet it won't reach eternity if you only notice events. You see, eternity is compressible in a moment. That's why he wrote that poem. In or is eternum, eternity in an hour.
Right.
No, Sri Aurobindo. Ah, yes, that is an idea there which is expressed, but here in this it is expressed much more in a more convincing way and more symbolically with far beautiful images. Of course, eternity in a grain of sand and so on. That is Blake.
Then it might can more, uh, overcome time, and there would be no death, right?
Yes, no death. Yes, that is true. So the mind can overcome the concept of time. That is to say, when mind lives in eternity. And when you say mind, again you commit a mistake because mind is only an instrument of the human spirit. So when you say the human consciousness, of which mind is only one operation, one function, one faculty, in fact, of the human consciousness or human being or personality, mind is one faculty and one part. Man is not all mind. Man is emotions, man is will, man is nervous system, man is body. And all that is the value of his instrumentation. He is a separate individual personality who is a spiritual entity and spark of the divine. Well, that spark of the divine is utilizing when it identifies itself with the eternal, certainly it is immortal. And then it has to project this immortality on the instruments afterwards and make them participate in the fundamental immortality of the spirit. Mind can, by undergoing a transformation, participate in the immortality of the spirit. That is why people very often go wrong when they think of immortality or eternity. They think that continuing the same body is immortality. No. It is participation by the instrument in the fundamental or essential immortality of the human spirit. Spirit is immortal, and to make the mind, life, and body participate in that consciousness of the immortal, well, that is real attainment of immortality. And it will last and remain as long as the spirit has its will of self manifestation. When that is withdrawn, all the instruments will also be withdrawn. But that will be an act of voluntary withdrawal, a decision of a higher consciousness, not a compulsion of subjection to the prevailing conditions of human ignorance. You see. Now, mind measures things by event. Yes, that to a consciousness higher than mind, well, eternity will be eternal present. Time will be eternal present. And higher consciousness can know world in quite a different way than mind. And only difficulty is that mind denies or refuses to accept the higher vision of the world as the higher consciousness can know. The higher consciousness knows time as one, past, present, and future. So to it, a condition beyond the present is known and attainable. To the present, he limits himself in the present, says, no, that cannot be. The mind denies. This is the difficulty. And, well, this supramental consciousness of which we are talking, the truth consciousness, it embraces this whole and unifies the succession of time and the divisions of space. Uh, and we have succession of developing harmony. All the world exists, and you can't say that in the supermind everything is static, standing like that. No, it is a sanction of the movement here. It contains a sanction of that which happens here. Say, imagine the cosmic creator as the poet or as the thinker. Now, as the poet first projects the poem in his own consciousness and sees it as if it was separate from himself, though it is not really separate from himself, but in the same way, the projection of the cosmos or universe takes place in the eternal. And he holds it within himself like the poet holding the poem, thinker holding the thought, the artist holding his own creation. Before it is thrown out into expression outside in language. It is there in substance, is it not? It is there in its essentiality, so to say. It is when it is thrown out in the form then it assumes a body, so to say. And then he can look at it as if it was somebody else's poem, though it is essentially he himself and nobody else. And still he can deal with it as if it was objective. That is what has happened to this world. World has become separated from that. Well, mind has intervened, put a barrier, that is all. Otherwise, the separation is that of a creator from his own creation. The separation is not essential in the sense of a division. It is a self-separation within the consciousness itself of a creator and his own creator. Yes, the poet and the dreamer, for instance, you see. And in reality, things are worked out from within and not worked out from outside. And the outer aspect of what happens in life is shock and struggle, difficulty, obstruction. It's only the superficial aspect of what has got to happen. Well, you say that you have to reach a certain point. Well, in reaching that point, a certain passage is indispensable, unavoidable. So difficulty, danger, hardship, and so on, so on. But that is the aspect of it. How to reach the reality. It is conditions for the task, okay, for the work, for what is happening, so to say, for the
Yeah.
process at work.
Is there an argument there where you say, well, if it already knows, then we're trying.
No, it is not already known here.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do mean. I do understand. It is known somewhere else, not
Yeah.
here.
Then if it's all okay,
It is not that is exact. It is not there automatically. No, it's known as a poet knows his poem. Even then, he has to write his poem, put his language. Yes, you know that this is why you do, and what you are doing, and who makes you do. That is all the difference. There is a predestination at work, you can say in one sense, but a man in intellectual or mental consciousness cannot say that predestination work with any veracity. He will be only juggling with words. When he says, oh, everything is predestined. Yeah, everything is predestined, why do you cook? You need not, yeah, it is predestined, you will eat. So it will get cooked there and come on the table. It doesn't. People, when they argue in philosophy and yoga, they forget what they are talking and how indiscriminate and chaotic the thinking will be if you really applied it to life. Yes, everything is predestined. Shivananda said it is predestined, but not here, there. So you have to go there. Then the predestination will become an operation of a spontaneous will. It is no longer predestination here, predestination to the mind, but there it is self-operative process. And you willingly cooperate in the work because it's a divine will at work. You see, then you are identified and fulfilled in what you call predestination.
that would be the joy.
Yes, it would be a joy of moving because fulfillment of the divine will, the highest fulfillment possible to man, is to carry out that which is decided by the supreme power, a self-conscious, infinite existence, consciousness, and bliss. Well, you participate in all that knowledge, consciousness, and bliss. So, world of struggle doesn't touch you. That is why those who live in that never care for success and never care to be afraid of being in a minority of 1 to 1,000,000. They don't live in this world in that way. I mean, they live and work in this very world, but this ignorance and majority and minority doesn't touch them at all. And they cannot work if that touches them, isn't it? That's it. Because they work in another light altogether different. And therefore, the Upanishad said, Satyameva Jayate, truth alone conquers. Because they know that it has already conquered in them. So they don't mind now. It is for others to see if it conquers for them. It is their business, isn't it? And they help others to see that the truth conquers. That's all. But in them, they are in eternity. They don't live in that. Well, where are we? Is it? Yes. Therefore, to see the things steadily and to see them whole, that is the nature of the Superman. To see the whole and proceed from the whole to this. Superman contains all forms of itself, pervades those forms as an indwelling presence and a self revealing light. It is present in every form and in every form. And it limits the variation which it compels. It compels the variation and it limits them. You see, it is the self-variation at work. And, gathers, disperses, modifies the energies. It gathers energies, disperses energies, modifies. It is seated within everything as the Lord in the heart of all existence, as the Gita says. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe tishtati. It is, Bhuta is all existences, not only human. The Lord is seated. Yes. And each thing in nature is governed by this indwelling presence. It seems work of intelligence without possessing intelligence in the plant and in the animal. And therefore we see that it works out the real idea in which self-knowledge is inseparable from self-existence. Self-knowledge and self-existence were indistinguishable. Supermind is cosmic vision, all comprehensive, all pervading, and all inhabiting, where the knower, the knowledge, and the known are one. Mind can accept it, well, just as it says the earth and the sun relation. It correct the relation by saying that the sun is not moving around the earth, but the earth is moving around the sun. A mental process is different, you see, because in the mind, even the inner observation proceeds on the basis of I and not I. When mind introspects and goes inside, even there, I, not I. Not in the objective observation only. This fundamental division behind is the oneness. It is present all the time. But mind has forgot. It has separated this from the infinite and then it has made the whole. It is not conscious that I have separated this from the infinite. Well, if the mind knows that it has acted with the knowledge of the infinite present, from which this part has been separated, then mind will not become ignorant. Mind has become ignorant because it has separated the part from the infinite whole and it totally is oblivious. Its knowledge is exclusive of the presence of the infinite and dealing with this part as if this is the whole. You see, ignorance comes in not because anything else goes. When knowledge comes, nothing changes. The position of the consciousness undergoes a radical change. And immediately one becomes conscious of the presence of the infinite. Well, then things become quite different. Well, supermind is a cosmic vision, all comprehensive, all pervading, all inhabiting. And it possesses the unity in a single act of vision. And this vision is life, full of it. It contains the indivisibility of truth and it contains all multiplicity of this without derogating the unity. It feels the tree emerging out of the seed in which is already contained. A fixed process in the phenomena of form. Permanence of the form also is true as the permanence of the real idea which is driving it is true. To the mind, form and spirit separate are separate. To the mind, that is the difference between form and spirit. To this to the supermind, form and spirit are not different at all. To the supermind, the tree and the process are not separate existence. Tree does not explain the seed, nor seed explains the tree. Cosmos explains both. The infinite explains both. And God explains the cosmos. He is responsible for the universe. And the real idea of the cosmos is responsible for the process of tree and the seed. That's all. Mind, this is not mental process. That's all. When people put this question whether egg was first or the hen and hen was first in the egg, they don't know that the question is beyond logic. First of all, beyond mind, because you are referring to a universal consciousness and universal energy. Then that universal energy has put a real idea or a real self-operating knowledge at work in some way there so that the potentiality and the form in which it comes out are related together by a process and that goes on infinitely repeating itself and infinite recurrence It is not as if it was limited to, one seed and one tree. In fact, one seed contains of infinite potentiality. The whole tree, I mean, well, the order. Well, in the supermind, there is no independent center of existence and no individual separate ego, because in the supermind, all is absolutely identical with the one, and the one is all existence. Yeah, that's it. Equally present everywhere, it is single and it's equal. Well, there's some idea of what seems to be at work. But I think very little of this chapter is left, and I think we'll tackle it next time. How much is time? Oh, we've gone through a lot of time. I forgot altogether about time. Well, when you deal with this, you forget time and space, isn't it? Partly.
Well, uh, you were speaking about laws and the laws that operate here, so to speak.
Yes.
The laws of the, which follow the laws of the infinite, or what?
Well,
But anyhow, my question is, before the transformation, do we, in a sense, observe the laws of the world,
there are laws of the
regulating
world.
society and things like that? Do we observe?
No, they are only working equations, you see, temporarily for the time being. In fact, if you study the growth of culture, you will see that there was never a time, where the laws that are obtained now were at one time regarded as undesirable. Many things which now we consider good was at one time considered not so good, or what was considered bad is now considered very good. So there is no standard, I mean no fixity in the values which either mind or ethics or society or collectivity creates for itself. It is only for the passing condition. And when you are trying to deal with something fundamental, well, if it is useful, you can give observance to it, I mean, keep to it. But if it clashes with the fundamental, you certainly flout it. Otherwise, there is no progress. You have got to flout it. If you bind yourself to it, then you compromise with the ultimate reality which is at work. I gave the instance of untouchability in India, for instance, or an aspect of considering a man who is bad or dishonest, see, permanently disqualified for spiritual life. Now that would be social judgment that, oh, this man is bad, but he is not eternally going to be bad. So you must give the potentiality of the divine in him must be allowed to act. And a spiritual man is never bound by these ideas. In fact, you take one simple instance of Mother and Sher Aurod's meeting. Now, look at it from Indian point of view. It's a wrong value, I know, but for India, it's a very true value. For an Indian, first of all, to connect himself with a European woman, look at it absolutely from outside. Then how is that? How can a European woman be a partner for an Indian spiritual giant? Well, if you observe social, he flouted it, and the result is acceptance of it. Don't you see? India accepts. Now, if he had at that time submitted to this current value, what would have happened to the spiritual possibility? It would have to be postponed. That's all. So you have to. Untouchability you cannot accept. Sati you cannot accept because it has coming for 400 years, 500 years. People have been observing untouchability. So it can be raised into the dignity of a law which is indubitable. I don't think it's no such invariable laws are there. They are all variable and it's necessary to wear. You can keep to it when you find they're quite innocuous and not meddling with the fundamentals. You can keep to it. It's no use going out and breaking them for nothing. See, it's not our business because it's good for society to continue. So we say, oh, it's good. Let it continue. It's nice.
The razor's edge there.
Yeah?
What they call the razor's edge. What is to be observed?
Yes, that you have to decide. Each is to be decided on its merit, you see. Each question you decide on its merit. Don't generally go out to throw stones in people's front, no. But if they come and meddle, you certainly say, keep to yourself. That's all. Oh, you are not of society? Yes, we are not of society. We are not respectable. Yes, we are not respectable. That's all. Quite all right. That's all.
Jim, you mentioned the real idea. Is that the same as Project Parker?
That's all. We can't help it.
Oh, very big of the real God.
And when you said the real idea, is that the same as when they say Prajapati?
No, it is prajnanam, they will say. Prajnanam. The self knowledge of the Supreme, separating the vision of its self view to its own self as a potentiality in knowledge. Self view of the infinite, you see, and it's an infinite self view. It's not one. That each one is charged with the power of the infinite. You see, all the concept that comes out or self view that is there is not mental self view, and therefore it has the power to throw itself into a world. That is what the world is, in fact. You see, it is not some anti-divine power and coming and overcoming the supreme and saying, "Now you shall not work, I shall work," and so there is no such thing. That is a very difficult conception to accept either of God or of a supreme power anti-God. Because if it can do that, it's more powerful than God. There he answered it very nicely in a letter, I think, to Dilip, where Dilip quoted Anatole France, and then he replied to it. Anatole France was ridiculing the Roman Catholic religion by saying, "Oh, if God was omnipotent and he created a world of suffering, then he is unjust and cruel. If he cannot do it, then he is not omnipotent. If he doesn't do it, he's perverse," like that, you see. And and so on both ways. Anatole's logic is like that, reducing. Very fine. It's a beautiful letter. I would like to read it sometime. It's interesting. And then he replied to it by saying, and what happened to Anatole when he walked up to heaven when he died? You see, well, God walked up to him and said, Anatole, that was quite a good idea of it. That is all right. But you know that I am of a retiring disposition, and generally I don't like to meddle with the pure creation that I have put into operation, because I like to be retired. And I was told that I was absolutely dispensable for the world management, because human mind came and told me, all advanced intellectuals, that science and this reason and science are going to solve all problems. So I said that was quite good. It gave me good retirement. And now I find that they have made a mess of the world even worse than even I could have made. Science, science and reason have made a mess of the world even far worse than even I could have done. So I find that there is a lot of confusion now, and not the order which they promised. So is it that reason is, then he put the same logic, that reason is able to do it and yet can't do it? Well, and so you see, a beautiful way of writing. It is a letter writing. It is in his letters, one of his letters. Very fun.
She cried, when you speak of shock and you speak of conflict here on earth, and you speak of it, you think of it collectively in wars, say where millions of people are involved, not just the individual, but millions of people. Uh, you get some of the magnitude of this problem. It's not just the individual, that's bad enough to
Yes.
have shots, but
Yes.
when you think of millions of people, 50 to 100 million people,
Yes.
millions dying even for lack of food alone.
Yes.
Our armies go around and slaughter. What takes place in the infinite mind before this takes place on earth?
Well, there's a conflict of forces in the vital. A conflict of forces of the vital is foreseen, and well, you can say managed. A conflict of vital forces is foreseen, because this is not only the material world, There is a vital world and there is a mental world. For understanding this answer to this problem, one has to widen his inner horizon first. That we are not living only in the human vital world only. There is a vital world far more extended and much wider than the world of life of man. Vital world of vital forces. That is a creation that has come down when the descent took place. Supermind to mind to life and matter. So when the life belt was created, so the universal life belt, not earth life. You understand the distinction between life on earth and life universal. Well, their tendencies, forces, and beings came into existence whose interest it is to influence the life here. And when they play a part in influencing human life, well, there is something very abnormal also they can bring into human life because to them the laws of limitation of matter do not apply. They are pure vital forces with tremendous vital power, unimaginable by ordinary human mind. So when they take a part in governing life of individuals and collectivities, well then certain tendencies come to the front in collective life. When they come to the front in collective life, the divine consciousness has to create a block to deal with them. That way, between the two, pull and the push, you see, it is like a tug of war. The, the thread of evolution is pulled further. The thread of evolution is pulled further. Well, if you say destruction, then as he put it to us in the fourth or fifth chapter of Life Divine, that you should not try to read an ethical significance in the universe. The universe is not ethical. It's a non-ethical universe in which we are living. And nobody is inflicting anything on somebody else. The divine is inflicting on his own self. So you must allow him to inflict suffering on his own self. He has perfect liberty to do so. In an age of democracy, you can't force him that no, you please don't inflict on yourself so many murders. He said, no, I like to get murdered. I like to get murdered with the Nazis, so as to allow chance of to myself in some other form. You see, so the thread of evolution, this vast disturbance, is a necessary preliminary to some great change. You see, then when you see in the vastness, you see that a certain purpose is to be carried out. Well, in that case, lot of disturbance might be necessary. When you are building a new house, then you destroy old foundations also, is it not? And when you destroy old foundations, naturally that we stood for a long time, we say, oh, this is gone, but it has got to go if the new thing is to come. That is what has actually happened to the world now in the psychological sense. And it is for that because the light is coming and has come. In fact, it is pressing. It's a symptomatic of that pressure of the inner consciousness. And a requirement is created here by this turmoil. An asking and an aspiration and a demand and the opening is given to it because of so much disturbance. If the disturbance was not there, well, man would be self-complacent and things are very nice and like Victorian people who thought that they had reached the golden age and nothing more was to be done. What a happy world, what a wonderful world, what a stupid world it was, they never knew. It is only when the wars came twice within one generation, then it was realized that that was not a golden age, an age of self-complacence in which the human mind was quite happy and satisfied and would have remained tamasic, means inert, if the disturbance didn't come. The disturbance was needed in order to shake the values which are partial and accepted as whole. So it was good that the thing is disturbed. Well, now, out of the turmoil, what we want is that an aspiration for the truth must come so that a new life can be created. Oh, it's all right. A disturbance is necessary to create a new life.
You think we have some idea of this magnitude of forces when we read Milton's Paradise Lost?
Yeah, some mental picture. It's not an exact perception. Intellectually conceived picture of a Protestant mind, you must know. If it had been Catholic mind like Divine Comedy,
Yes.
he would have more faithfully represented the play of forces, which is done in Divine Comedy. What is the name of that man? Dante. Yes, Dante's Divine Comedy. It's more faithful to the original. What happens? It's not exact, but it is more near the functioning. This is intellectual expression, very well done. God doesn't come out very marvelously against Satan anyway. In life in Paradise Lost, Satan seems to be the hero. You see, God is too goody of the Protestant mind. Unfortunately, he has no idea of what is God. So naturally, he puts it a goody idea and a moral God and a nice God, but he's tepid, absolutely lacking in omnipotence and omniscience. Satan seems to carry some idea of the omnipotence in him. But that is what the Protestant mind could do. You can't blame him. He's done the job well.
Do you find that when going over that little map on the blackboard, and somehow it's difficult?
Yes, it is. Well, it is in one sense the epitome of the two chapters in a way, certain way. It contains all that you have talked. You see the one infinite, absolute Satchitananda consciousness is the truth conscious world. And this is the world of where we live, the world of ignorance, mind, life, and body, or matter, life, and mind. You see here the triplicity of ignorance and the three super, the triune existence of the infinite. And this first creates the truth world, the super mind. It is that which connects, and from this is the projection of this world, and not an imposition from here to the Supreme, or that the Supreme is overcome by something and so on. It is a process by which it has self-determined itself into a world of mind, life, and body. And here you find the infinity giving rise to supermind and giving rise to mental life, vital life, and material existence. Now, law of this mind now is essential multiplicity. Law of the Superman is essential unity. But a diversity held as a constant and eternal potentiality. So it is not Unitarian unity, but a unity which holds eternal multiplicity within itself. Now, it is a preparatory level. Mind is a preparatory level, and where the part is taken from the whole, and the infinite is lost sight of, and the part is treated as if it is the whole. But it prepares itself to go back to the unity. And here in the mind, the thought and the being are always held as separate, whereas thought is a part of the being, really speaking. Well, that is not known and perceived in the mind. In the mind, the I, idea, will, each thing is separate. And that creates the gulf between God and man. That creates, the difference between the infinite and the world, or God and man. Here, if you come, then here you find in the supermind the omnipresence and a predetermined idea and force at work, like the seed in which the real idea is already predetermined and charged with the power of self-realization. And you find law means operation of self-nature, a decision in the object itself, or a knowledge operating in the object itself, which constantly repeats a behavior which you can predict in the mind. And time and space are the self-extensions and expansions of the infinite, felt as subjectively time, objectively as space. And this contains and pervades what it knows, and it therefore puts into operation a real idea. That is the supermind. This one gives rise to infinite number of real ideas, if you like to call it, and this real idea project themselves into a cosmos which we notice. And this is not dependent on any outer force, but its own inherent knowledge and power operative from within. That is a real idea. It's not a mental idea, therefore it is distinguished by calling it real idea. Supermind operates on the real idea, creating a truth world. And in the truth world, it projects itself into mind. And mind is an indirect working of the supermind itself. Only because mind has become unconscious of the supermind, it's not able to be conscious that it is an instrument and a separative or a derivative organ of the supermind. Mind would not have known what it knows if the supermind was not there. If mind was absolutely isolated from the supermind, then mind would not have known what it knows, even scientifically, socially, and in all departments of life. It is because mind is a derivative instrument of the supermind that even mind is able to attain the limited range of knowledge and effective application to life, which we notice in our existence in individual and collective life. You see, mind is supported by the supermind all the time. Only it is ignorant because it takes the part for the whole, and it separates being from idea and thought, and it creates a gulf between God and man. You see?
So, Purani, something that version of real idea
Yes.
contains
It
what?
contains and pervades.
Oh, contains pervade. It's the word opposite. Seed.
Infinite and world. Brahman and the world, or man and God. Last word.
Predetermination.
Yes, yes. The origin of ignorance, when we deal, perhaps this very problem will come, origin of ignorance. Therefore, I want to hurry through this, if I can. Because in this origin of ignorance, we will have to deal with this problem in a different way. And I think that we should reserve time for that rather than now. Because we have got the preliminary background now of this, exposition which is making, so we can take things for granted a little and proceed fast. I mean, otherwise we'll be held up. There are 28, how many chapters it makes? 40? 52 chapters, is it not? Life Divine is more than 52 chapters.
You think we're going to get through?
I don't know. No, we will omit some portion in between and take up more, difficult part and deal with it. That's all.
We're